Alright, what's going on everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So in this one we're going over some day 1 decks for the new season pass card dropping tonight, and that is Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider is a 2-cost 3 power that reads on reveal, the last card you played moves here. So Move is finally getting some support this month, both with the season pass card and with some of the other cards we have coming up later this month, like Spider-Man 2099, as well as Silk. So I think there's going to be some real neat stuff to do with this card. However, I don't think we're going to see the full impact of it upon release, as Move I think needs more than just one additional piece to really shine to its true potential. So I think this is a card that we're going to see get better as time progresses and more cards come out later this month. But we do still have some neat things we can check out with this card in the meantime. In terms of if this card is worth buying, generally I think most season pass cards are worth buying. If you're going to spend any money in Marvel Snap, season pass is the way to go. However, if you are a little more selective and don't buy every pass, this might be one of the passes you could get away with skipping if you're not as a big fan of the Move archetype in particular. But generally, passes are worth it, and it also removes the possibility of your random Series 5 roll, if you happen to get one, being a season pass card you might not have been overly interested in the future. But yeah, it's a rather solid 2-drop. I think it's going to be interesting to experiment with. So we're going to check out some day 1 decks here from Safety Blade. As always, link to the article will be in the description, where you can find out a little bit more information about some of these decks, as well as easily import them into the game. If you like the content we're doing here on Snap Zone, remember to like and subscribe. It helps out a ton. But without further ado, let's dive into Ghost Spider's day 1 decks. Starting it out, we have some all-in Move decks with the big Move man himself, Heimdall. So here we're just jamming in most of the good Move cards, things like Human Torch, things like Dagger, Craven, a lot of different things that benefit from moving around. Angela is another one here where she gets a decent amount of benefit from the fact that we can place a card into her lane and then move it out so we can keep pumping her later on. Forge is a pretty neat inclusion here, mainly for the Human Torch, because the doubling can get out of hand if you can do it a few times, and if you can start him off at a 4 power instead of a 2 power, well, it gets out of hand that much quicker. We have a handful of ways to move around our cards here, mainly Ghost Spider, Cloak, Doctor Strange, Iron Fist, and Heimdall as our big curve topper. I'm not sure how well Move is going to do in the current environment, but if you want to go all in with the Move package, this seems like a pretty decent way of doing so. And then another all-in Move direction you can take opts to go the multiple man Hulkbuster route instead of the Human Torch one, a little bit less resilient to Killmonger, which I personally like, as you get a lot of collateral damage there from other decks trying to target Kitty Pryde. So a lot of the same cards here, however, we are opting to go with Multiple Man and Hulkbuster in this version, and I think if I were to pick between these two, this is probably the one I'd go for, as I think the synergy there is really powerful with the addition of Ghost Spider. Then we have one of my favorite lists for this card, and that is going to be Movement Control style deck. So I love the idea here. Wave is a really key card right now in helping us out versus decks that swarm the board, mainly Kitty Pryde stuff and Sarah stuff, but those are two very relevant metagame cards right now. So the fact that this deck has an answer to that in Wave, and it also has some powerful lane control elements with Goose, preventing the opponent from playing their waved card on the final turn. It also makes it so you don't have to worry about a Hulk in a given lane, and then Arrow can help close it out at the end, because if we can maintain a lead going into the final turn, especially if we get the wave off, we can just arrow them to another lane where their big play isn't as impactful. So I definitely like this version. Nebula seems quite good in it too, as one of the more powerful 1-drops in the game right now, and you definitely want Wave here as a way to help deal with those Kitty Pryde decks, as they are very popular and powerful. But this one definitely a little bit more control-y in terms of where the opponent and what the opponent can play, but that's definitely the style of move I've always liked, so I'll definitely be checking this one out. Then we have a combination of the Bounce archetype with Move, and this is a really neat idea. I haven't seen anyone suggest this before, but Bounce is one of the more powerful decks in the game right now with things like Kitty Pryde, Hitmonkey, Beast. but why not just slam a move package in there to add to it? And I kind of dig it. Move obviously has good synergy with Angela. We have a lot of things here that are 2 power, so we can move multiple things with our Doctor Strange. Definitely a lower curve deck here. Our most expensive card is Miles, who will hopefully only cost 1 a lot of the time. So this definitely feels more like a low down kind of aggro style deck, even though hard to fully translate aggro in the way that, you know, Snap does its gameplay. But this definitely feels like a more spammy, aggressive sort of deck. You do have to be careful about things like the deck we just looked at previously with Wave, but if you can dodge the waves, this seems like a really neat direction to try, kind of benefiting off of the fact that Bounce is a really powerful archetype and it appreciates low-cost cards, and a lot of the move stuff we have here is pretty low cost. And then we have another iteration of that deck here, leaning more into the bounce strategy than the move strategy. First list had a lot of move cards. This one only has a few, but they do seem like they still have potential to be impactful, especially Human Torch, and again, keeping a nice and low curve here, which is something the bounce deck really strives to do, so we can just play out all of our cards and get some really big bishops and hit monkeys. Then we've got some Silver Surfer decks to look at here. So this first one is a Sarah Surfer build. I know quite a few people used to experiment with move Sarah Surfer. It's something I've never really gotten the chance to try out, but it kind of makes sense. Your curve works out pretty well with how these Sarah Surfer decks try and position their game plan. We have a good variety of 2-drops here, as you do want to play something in the early game. So we have Kraven, Ghost Spider, Jeff, or even Iron Fist in a pinch. So I imagine you will want to be trying to time that Iron Fist or one of your other move cards here to hopefully enable a cheap Miles during a turn where you have the extra 1 energy to spend. But generally, we have a lot of good 3-drops here: Brood, Mainstay, and Surfer decks. In terms of the move stuff, we have Strange, we have Juggernaut, Vulture, and Polaris, so we can move the opponent's stuff around a bit, while we can also move around our own stuff and make a big Vulture, get down to cheap Miles, and then have Sarah help close it out, being able to play 3 3-drops on the final turn, or we could even do 2 3-drops and then Miles and a 2-drop. So a very neat take on the archetype, and I'm very curious to see how it ends up performing day 1. If you're not as much of a fan of Sarah in Surfer decks, we've got you covered. This is way more all in on the move theme. Still going Silver Surfer stuff, but opting to not go for a Sarah direction, which does give us a little bit of a lower curve and allows us to include another interesting move tool in Kingpin. Kingpin has never been the most exceptional card, but he is very, very fun when he works, and especially if you can surprise people with him on the final turn of the game. So if you want a bit more of a full move focused Silver Surfer deck, this is the one I would try out. Then we have a list that I think might have the most potential of the bunch, and that is Value Move. So this is basically the Stature Black Bolt deck with some slight move modifications. And I think this is a deck that many players moved away from far too quickly. It's still putting up good stats in spite of the nerf to Stature and Black Bolt, but just not many people are playing it. So this version, we are running some move cards, so we can get Ghost Spider in. So we're running things like Vulture, Polaris, Kraven, Iron Fist, just generally good, cheaper move cards. Vulture is going to be our kind of main move payoff, but we do also have a bonus one in Kraven, who can also actually get more benefit from the fact that we're moving around the opponent's cards a little bit. Iron Lad is really neat in this list, as there's a lot of powerful stuff for him to copy, like Shuri, like Vulture, like Jeff, just a lot of good copy targets. So this one definitely seems very powerful. If you like the Stature Black Bolt stuff, this seems like a cool new take on it. Next up, we have some Sarah decks to close it out. So first being Sarah Control. This is one of the best decks in the game right now. So can't get that much worse if you add some move cards to it, right? Basically, we're just choosing to add things like Dagger and Ghost Spider, so we have a little bit of flexibility in moving our cards around. And then Jeff, which a lot of players include, but not everybody includes in the Sarah Control deck, but I personally am a fan of. I think this is pretty neat. Obviously, Sarah really likes those 2-drops, as they cost 1 on the final turn and enable us to spam out a lot of stuff. However, the question remains, will it be worth it for the cards we had to cut, like Bishop? only time will tell. And then last but not least, we have Sarah Move. So this is a bit less control styled. We're not trying to blow up the opponent's big thing. We're just trying to control the flow of the game and where our opponents are allowed to play cards with things like Juggernaut, Polaris, and Arrow. I've noticed like nobody plays around Arrow anymore. Most people do not expect her, and especially with all the Hulk running around, she can be really, really good if you go into the final turn being ahead. I generally like the small move package here. Obviously has very good synergy with Angela, and it gives us a little bit more game against the lane control decks, which sometimes can be a little bit more problematic for the Sarah style decks. One thing I really love about Ghost Spider is she gives us the flexibility of trying to play into a lane that the opponent is trying to lock down with Storm or try to close out with turn 5 Spider-Man. Well, we don't have to worry about the fact that we put a card in a lane we're unlikely to be able to win because we can just pull it on over with Ghost Spider. And I think that is actually going to have a lot of utility even outside of decks that are trying to utilize all the movement synergy. And there we have it, all our day 1 decks for Ghost Spider. So if you want to check out any of these decks, again, highly recommend checking out the article in the description from Safety Blade. You can grab the codes and see a little bit more in-depth write-up on how some of these decks are trying to function and the ideas behind them. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know in the comments what you think about Ghost Spider. Is this one you're picking up or passing on? And what ideas are you excited to try out with her on day 1 and maybe a few weeks down the line when we have access to some of the other move cards? I'm Zombies. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to like and subscribe, and stay tuned here at Marvel Snap Zone for all your Marvel Snap content. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.